Major General Gupta ji, Dr. Mrs. C.T. Mishra, the distinguished fellows and friends. First, I would like to thank INTAC and particularly the chairman of INTAC for inviting me here for giving this lecture. A very important occasion, two important occasions. One, of course, is the ninth Pupul Jayakar lecture, memorial lecture. I consider this as a great honor, not only to me, but to my university. And also we are celebrating this, the World Heritage Day today. So I really thank the organization. And today I will be speaking about the relevance of the study of ancient heritage and how it is really relevant to the contemporary society, the modern society. Now, nobody is really thinking about this, not only in India, but outside India also. I was invited to give a keynote address at the Shanghai Archaeology Forum, which is a world archaeology body. And there, for the first time, I spoke about the Indian knowledge system and its relevance to the modern society. And it was really highly appreciated, and it was suggested that these type of revelations have to be made, and people have to be really educated about the importance of the cultural heritage of the country. Now, the objective of archaeology history, both of them deal with the ancient heritage, is to learn from the past so that we can better understand the present and so that we are better prepared for the future. This is the objectives of the study of the cultural heritage. And in this lecture, I am going to touch upon some of the important aspects like how the study of ancient heritage, that is history and archaeology, can play an important role in nation building and cater to the needs of the society. That is one important issue that I would like to discuss today. Also, I will talk about the reconstruction and preservation of traditional knowledge system. And this reconstructed traditional knowledge system has to be put to use for the betterment of the communities. And efforts may be made to preserve and conserve the ancient heritage for the posterity. And I will also touch upon the objectives that we have, some of the objectives that I will be speaking today. Now they will be translated in fact at the site of Rakhigarhi. Friends, let me give you two examples how much ignorance there is among the common people about the subject. One incident, of course, is long back, 1965. The Department of Archaeology in Deccan College was established by Professor S. D. Sankalia in 1939. The first department to be established in university system. And till 1965, the department had achieved a lot. And then, 1965, Professor Sankalia invited a very prominent politician from Maharashtra. And he was taking him around and showing the department. And Professor Sankalia thought that maybe he's able to convey in fact what message in fact he wants to do. But before leaving, in fact, the minister said to Sankalia, what is the use of such departments? Because these departments are not generating any revenue for the country. On the other hand, the country is spending, in fact, a lot for this type of departments. We don't blame him because it is the failure of our community. Archaeologists, historians have not made sufficient efforts to convey the significance of the subject to the common people. And then, of course, Professor Sankalia and all of us started writing about this subject in various medias. And we thought that now people have at least realized the importance. But this is the incidence of 2011, Professor Upendra Singh, the former Prime Minister's daughter, who is a professor in Delhi University, she came to visit one of our excavations in Haryana with her students. And naturally, because she's a daughter of Prime Minister, with her came a lot of IAS and IPS officers. And I was showing her, her and the students, the remains that we excavated. And in the background, I don't know whether the IAS or IPS officers were murmuring, but our students heard that the murmur. Again, same impact. What a waste of the national wealth here. Why these people have come all the way from Pune and working in a small village. Probably there is a lot of wealth buried here, and they want to excavate this wealth here. But one very important, one very interesting comment came that these people did not get an opportunity to play in the dust when they were children, so they are playing now. So this is the level of understanding, in fact, among the people. So we thought that that now we should really give more emphasis on the relevance of the subject. We have done enough work, in fact, for the reconstruction of the past history. Our history goes back to almost 2 million. In fact, the earliest stone tool found in the Indian subcontinent is dated to 2 million now. And from 2 million to the late medieval period, we know we have been able to reconstruct the history of the country. Now, what we want to tell the people, the common people, is why the study of early civilization culture important. And we all know that it sets the foundation for modern South Asia, the earlier cultures, one of the most populous regions of the world, the birthplace of major world religions, also birthplace of major technologies and important cultural traditions. So unless we understand, in order to fully understand the contributions of historical and modern South Asia to the world, we need to understand the roots. And the roots are lying, in fact, in our early cultures. We always believe that our ancient cultures or even modern cultures cannot be claimed by any narrowly defined community or political group, but it is a common heritage of all communities in the world. And without archaeology, we would have no understanding about the past 2 million years of history for which there is no written records. So this is the message that one has to convey to the common people. Now, one of the important breakthrough in the history of human culture is the introduction of agriculture. And the date of the introduction of agriculture varies from region to region. In India, there are two regions. In fact, one is the Indus Plain, and the other one is the Mid-Ganga Plain, where we find the evidence of the origins of agriculture. And after the origins of agriculture, of course, number of different cultural traditions came into existence. In this map, you can see the different cultural traditions that came into existence. Now, one of the important sites which has provided the evidence of the origin and development of the basic sciences and technology is the site of Mehergarh, which is located in Pakistan. It is exactly at the Bolan Pass, and you can see the thick deposit of the site at Mehergarh. And here, in fact, the evidence of the settled life goes back to 7,000 or even 7,500 BC. And from 7,500 BC, one can see the constant development in the science and technology, and that development has ultimately culminated into the formation of the Harappan culture. So this has not only given us idea about the origin and development of the basic technologies, or what we call as the Indian knowledge system, but also it has put to rest the controversy about the origin of the Harappan culture or the Harappan civilization. It was thought that by many European scholars that the Harappan culture originated because of the maybe people or influence coming from the West. But that is not true. In fact, it is the indigenous development which the site has provided enough evidence for. We can see a lot of developments, in fact, in the architecture. Right from the beginning, people have started building this type of structures of mud, and then, of course, at some stage, they switch over to mud brick structures. But this type of technology was introduced in the Indian subcontinent. And then, of course, because the people started settling at one place, the requirement of the people also began to increase, and people started producing lot of ornaments, a lot of crafts which are required for the community. And we have very strong evidence about that. The evidence of the beginning of this particular tradition of the craft specialization going back to 7000 BC. At the site of Mehergarh, of course, we have found a lot of burials in which we have found the evidence. And also in the habitation, of course, there is evidence of the manufacturing activity indicating the gradual, the evolution of the technology. So as I mentioned that, there is a gradual evolution of the technology, and by 3000 BC or 2600 BC, all the technologies, basic technologies that we talk about, now they were fully matured. The Harappan people, in fact, they were responsible for the development of these basic technologies and sciences. And then, of course, from the Harappan to the modern times, one can see the continuity. I think India is one of the few countries, perhaps India and China, these are the only two countries where we can see the continuity in the cultural tradition for more than 5,000 years. So this is a very strong point of the Indian culture. And of course, the northwest part of India is very important because, it is an ideal situation where, one the cultures can develop and flourish in that part. The ecological condition is ideal for this particular purpose. Now, when it comes to the Harappans, we know that the Harappans did not create any monumental architecture as pyramids or ziggurats, which we see in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Even they did not create life-size sculptures, palaces, royal tombs, which were part of Egyptian and Mesopotamian traditions. Tourists mainly go there, in fact, to see all these creations. They are not there in the Harappan sites, and hence visitors or scholars show least excitement to visit or study Harappan sites. Now, let me tell you that today, in fact, in India, there are hardly a dozen, archaeologists working on the Harappan culture. But in Egypt, there are 3,000 archaeologists working, and they have produced more than 3,000 books on the Egyptian culture, whereas the archaeologists in the subcontinent, they have not been able to produce more than 2 dozen books on the Harappan culture. The Harappans were more practical. This is a very important aspect that needs to be brought to the notice of the people. They were more practical, did not believe in burying the wealth in tombs and creating monument architecture. They were very much competent and equally prosperous and competent, but the wealth they generated was used for the welfare of the common people and to create well-planned, clean, hygienic cities, civic amenities, etc. So this is the thinking of the Harappans. The Harappan philosophy was different from the philosophy of the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians, and the wealth they were generating, but they were getting a lot of wealth from the West. So that wealth was used for the creation of big, well-planned cities and amenities for the common people. So that is the thinking that one needs to convey to the world. One of the important contribution of the Harappans is the well-planned town planning. We don't see, in fact, in the contemporary world, we don't see such kind of well-planned town planning. But this town planning, in fact, the well-planned cities have not come into existence suddenly. There is a long precedence. Now at the work that we are doing, in fact, in the Gaggar Basin, clearly indicates that the dates of the Harappan culture are being pushed back to almost 5,000, 5,500 BC. So from 5000 or 5500 BC, one can see a constant development in the architecture. In fact, they began their lifestyle in small circular huts, maybe pit dwellings, and gradually they switch over from pit dwellings to overground structures. And then, of course, the size of the structures started growing gradually, and then they came to this particular status. The development of urbanization happened around 3000 BC, and then, of course, well-planned cities came into existence. This is one of the important contribution of the Harappan to the world history. So we need to talk about what is the contribution of our early cultures in the history of the region, in the history of the nation, and in the history of the world. And certainly, the Harappans were the first, in fact, the early cultures of India were the first, in fact, who taught the world, in fact, how to build, modern cities. This is some of the, evidence about the well-planned cities. They must have used all kinds of, sciences, mathematics, and all kinds of measures for laying down the cities because they are so perfectly well-planned. Even, unfortunately, we are not able to, find out because, the Harappan letters or the script has not been deciphered yet. But once it is deciphered, I'm sure that we will uncover or unveil the, wealth of the history of the Harappans. Now, all the structures within this, within the structures, we can see the basic facility. We have the evidence of the basic facilities, like the bathing platforms or the latrines. We always thought that the concept of commode has come from the West, but that this is the earliest evidence of the commode anywhere found in the world, dated to 2600 BC. And the tradition that we always have a water pot in our toilet with a small lota. So that tradition continues from the Harappan times to the modern times. This is the evidence of the bathing platforms or the bathrooms from the site of Kalibanga, the site which was excavated by Professor B.P. Lal for almost 13 years. And this site has provided enough evidence about the life of the Harappans. So even the concept of tiles was developed. In fact, you can see here in the beautifully developed, beautifully decorated tiles were created by the Harappans. So again, these things have not really come from the West, but probably have gone, they originated here and gone from here to the western part of the world. Then all the cities, of course, the bathing platforms, the toilets, they were all connected to the, to the well-planned civic amenities. They had underground the drainage system, underground in the open drainage system and the closed drainage system. And the evidence have indicated that, the toilets in fact were connected to the closed drainage system and the bathing platforms or the bathrooms, they were connected to the open drainage system. And also they created this water, wells and facilities for the people within the settlement. What is important that, which we have not really learned from the Harappans, they created the network of the, the drainage pattern within the Harappan cities. Not only cities, but in towns and even small villages also we see that. And then, this network of the drainage pattern was connected to the main drainage line. And the main drainage line was taken outside the city wall and emptied somewhere. So this is the evidence from the site of Harappa, where they have excavated the main drainage line, and this is the outlet of that which was outside the city wall. So that indicates that the Harappan cities were very, very clean. They did not allow any dirty water to be sprayed within the settlement, and that also reflects in the health of the Harappan people. We have excavated number of Harappan skeletal remains from Farmana and Rakigadi now, and some of our colleagues from outside, particularly from Korea, they're trying to understand, whether the Harappans suffered from any diseases. And they were very much disappointed. They said that, we are not really finding any evidence of disease, in fact, prevalent in the Harappan population. So that indicates that, how, healthy Harappan people were. And that is mainly because, the civic amenities were created and the facilities were created within the cities. When we move around, in fact, I'm excavating at the site of Rakigadi now. So when we move around the village, we get the feeling that, perhaps we are moving in the Harappan village. There is, that much similarity. The roads are exactly like the Harappan roads. The, orientation of the structures, the arrangement of the structures on both sides is exactly like the Harappan structures. Even the typical plan of, modern plan of a structure or a house is exactly like Harappan plan. There is a middle courtyard and rooms on all sides, very important from scientific point of view. But what the modern people have not learned from the Harappans is that they are not taking care of the disposal of the dirty water. The dirty water here, you can see that it spreads in the street, which was not the case in fact during the Harappan times. The Harappans, of course, have introduced number of important traditions. One of the important tradition, of course, is the great bath identified at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. According to me, this is the earliest evidence of swimming pool anywhere in the world. Because it has got, you can see here in fact the whale. I visited this site of Mohenjo-daro again in fact last month, and I carefully observed in fact the how the water system was created for this particular bathing platform or the great bath. And you can see the well here, and from that well in fact the water was drawn, and the water from the tank was replaced periodically. And then of course you can see the close-up of that. There are rooms on all sides, and this is the arrangement in fact which you see in case of the modern swimming pools. Again, we thought that this particular concept has come from the West, but this is the earliest evidence of its kind found in the Indian subcontinent. The Harappans were the great, they were really great civil engineers. They have introduced the most scientific construction method, which is known by English bond. One line of the brick, of course, is placed horizontal, next line is placed vertical. This kind of construction method, it is called English bond. But you know that English people were not really aware about this particular construction method till late or the early medieval period. And this is the earliest evidence of the scientific construction method, which was introduced by the Harappans long back. So we always say that instead of calling this as English bond, it should be called as the Harappan bond. And because of this particular construction method, these structures have survived to such a great height. This is the most recent photograph I took, in fact, at the site of Mohenjo-daro. Unfortunately, this very important site of Mohenjo-daro is in a very bad state. In fact, the World Heritage Body has given ultimatum. They say that if you are not able to maintain the site properly, if you are not able to preserve and protect the site, the World Heritage is going to withdraw the status. And because of that, they had invited some 25 specialists from different parts of the world. And we gave them good suggestion about how to go for the preservation of the site. And I hope that will work for them. The sites in fact in Haryana. Now this is the evidence from the site of Harmana, which we excavated for at least for 6 to 7 years. And what we have noticed, including the site at the site of Rakigadi, is that most of the structures in this part were made of mud bricks only, not burnt bricks. It is not that the Harappans could not afford the burnt bricks, but they did it from intentionally, from scientific point of view. The structures made of mud or mud bricks, if you have thick walls of those structures, for the structures, then perhaps the inner climate, in fact, inner environment, remains very congenial. It remains warm, in fact, in the winter season, which is very severe in this part, and remains, cool in summer, which is also, the summer is so drastic or extreme in this part. So this type of evidence is found. Unfortunately, we are not really learning from the Harappans. Most of the structures in the village or in this part, they have switched over from these mud or mud brick structures to the concrete structures, and those concrete structures are not really good ideal for the living purpose. They are not really cozy from inside. So if we need to convey the importance of the construction of mud or mud brick structures to the common people, and I'm sure that once they understand the importance of these, they will again switch back to the traditional method. The earliest evidence of dockyard anywhere in the world, at the site of Lothal. There is a lot of controversy. Some of the Western scholars have said that this could be a sweetwater tank. There is no need of that because the river is flowing by the site of this settlement. This was excavated by S.R. Rao of the Archaeological Survey of India, and he showed this particular structure without telling the Navy people, and he wanted to get the opinion of the Navy people. And then the Navy people, in fact, without understanding what is the hypothesis propounded by archaeologists, they said that this could be the earliest dockyard, mainly because this dockyard has this particular structure has this ramp, and always, there's a ramp associated with the dockyard. And there's a possibility because Harappans were able to, build and repair ships. And we have the evidence for that. So perhaps, this is the earliest evidence of dockyard anywhere in the world. So I consider this as a very important contribution of the Harappans to the world history. And I come to the next important settlement of the Harappans, that is the site of Dholavira. Everybody, perhaps all of you, have read about the site of Dholavira. You have read about the magnificent evidence of the architecture and very imposing settlement. But what we can learn from this particular site is, the water harvesting and water management that was generated by the Harappans at this particular site. This site was located, even during the Harappan times, this part was desert. In fact, this part was very dry. Maybe the rainfall was slightly higher. And the Harappans had to build this particular city at this particular spot because this is located on the main trade route between Sindh and Saurashtra. So what the Harappans did, they were aware that there is a paucity of water here. So there are two small streams by the site of this settlement. And whenever there is a rainfall here, very occasional rainfall in the desert part, the small streams get, flash floods, sudden floods. And the Harappans have dammed, in fact, both the streams, maybe this way. And they have diverted the water from both the streams inside the settlement. A very important evidence of the civil engineer and water engineering. And inside the settlement is divided into three parts. And inside the settlement, they have created underground water channel system, underground water tank system. And all the water it was diverted that has been stored in these water tanks. Now this is one of the important water tanks the Archaeological Survey of India has excavated at the site. What is important here is that this particular water tank is dug into solid rock for 3 to 4 meters. And we are wondering, in fact, how the Harappans have done that, because they did not have the steel or the iron implements for doing this. And they only had this copper or the bronze implements with them. And with the copper or bronze implements, it is not possible to dig into solid rock. But the method that was introduced by the Harappans that has survived till today, and it is being used very effectively in different parts of the country. So what is done, in fact, they can remove the blocks, and they can make a groove on the area of the blocks, deep grooves, and they can put the wooden pegs in them and keep pouring water, so that the wooden peg starts swelling and the rock starts cracking. That is how the big chunks were taken out, and perhaps with the help of the bronze chisels, perhaps the sides and the bottom were perhaps smoothened like this. So this is a very important methodology that was rather the traditional method that was introduced by the Harappans and continues even till today. And then of course they have excavated underground tanks in different parts of the city, and they all were connected by the underground water channel system. I made sure that when the water is kept circulating within the Harappan city. So this is something which is really very important, something to learn from the Harappans. Today between the site of Dholavira and the nearest town is around 110 kilometers. That is the site town of Rapur. And between Rapur and Dholavira, there are hardly 4 or 5 villages, and the settlement is not happening in this part, mainly because of the dearth of water in this part. But if this particular system, which was introduced by the Harappans, if this is implemented in this part, I'm sure that the entire Kutch part will be a green zone. This is the method that was created 5,000 years ago, and there is still this particular method has relevance even today. So this is the one in fact which we can learn from the Harappans. It does not really require maybe foreign collaboration or large funding to carry out this particular project. The Harappans also introduced double cropping system. They realized that at some stage they wanted to produce large amount of food grain, maybe surplus amount of food grain, because there were a number of different classes within the society, and they need to be paid in kinds. And maybe grain was one of the important way of paying them in kinds. And they started growing, maybe this is the evidence of the plowed field dated to around 3000 BC, beginning of the Harappan civilization. And they produce really this they use this particular system for the surplus production of food grain in this part. What is important that the method that was introduced by the Harappans, the plowing, plow zones or the plow marks that we see, they're very much similar to the modern plow marks. We can see the two plow marks here. In fact, one is the running in east-west direction, which are very close to each other, and the other one is the north-south direction here. You can make out this the remains of the plowshare. So in the furrow marks which are close to each other, maybe the main crop can be grown like wheat or barley, and in the furrow marks which are quite apart from each other, there one can grow secondary crop. And exactly same system is being followed in this part even today. You can see in fact the modern and the plow system matches exactly very well with the ancient modern system. The tools, this is the the replica of the plow found at the site of Banauli, again located in the Ghaggar plain. And the modern plow is not much different from the Harappan plows. So there is a lot of traditions, a lot of continuation in the in the tradition or in the technologies that were introduced long back. There is something to learn from the Harappans again, and the world has learned perhaps. The Harappans did not have natural resources located within their region. Most of the resources were located outside, controlled by the contemporary population. So what the Harappans did, in fact, they established good relation with the contemporary society, and they managed to get the flow of raw material from the outside without any hindrance. And then of course the Harappans had technology with them, so they process in their in their workshops, and they supplied the finished goods to the same people from whom they obtained the raw material. And that is how the Harappans started increasing their wealth. And if you had to give the modern maybe parallel, I can give the parallel of Japan. In fact, Japan was almost destroyed in 1950 in the Second World War, and Japan became a world economic power within next 15 years. They held Tokyo Olympics in 1964 or 65, and that time they showcased in fact their economic power. So what Japan did was exactly same as the Harappans did. In fact, Japan started importing raw materials from India, China, from other countries, and they had technology with them. They started producing goods, and they started supplying the finished good to the same people, in fact, from whom they obtained the raw material. So this is again something which one can learn from our ancient history. Then for the development of the trade, of course, they use various means of communication. The bullock cart was one of the important means of communicating with different sides, hinterland communication. And this particular tradition again continues till modern time. And then, as I said, that the Harappans they used to build ships for the long distance trade, for carrying out the sea trade. And we have, these are the two replicas. Two kinds of ships were built by the Harappans. One is the ships or the boat made of wooden plank with flat bottom, and the other one is the boat made of big grass or the reed. And even today, in fact, the reed boats are made in Iran. You can see one of the examples of that place in the museum. And the type of boats that are being used, in fact, in the Sindh region, particularly in this Indus River, they're exactly the same as the Harappan boats. And these boats, in fact, both the plank boats as well as the reed boats, were used by the Harappans for a long distance trade, with Mesopotamia, with Egypt. And you can also see inside the boats, in fact, there is a house here, and there are birds also And you know that, what is the significance of that. Birds are always kept, when you are carrying out the long distance trade or long distance journey, because the birds will always locate the land nearby. So this is again a very important tradition that, the Harappans have taught not only to the Indian subcontinent, but to the entire world. And then, of course, they have introduced a lot of, basic technologies which are very much relevant even today. A lot of communities in India, South Asia, they're still dependent on this traditional, knowledge system. Pottery making is one of the important, this particular technique was introduced in the Indian subcontinent around 6,500 BC, and during the Harappan times, it was perfected or matured. And this is the type of pottery that, beautifully made, beautifully painted pottery was made by the Harappans. And this tradition, as I say, that even continues. The modern potters are using the same technique as the Harappan technique. So we have to make sure that, the ancient technology or techniques that were developed, they are properly studied, they are preserved and conserved for the modern population. Both in fact, same, arrangement, in the past, male were mostly making pots on the wheel, and women, in fact, the role of women was to paint and, give the treatment on the outer surface. So exactly same, arrangement is found even today. There is a continuity of technology and continuity of the technology of the tradition also. I mentioned that, a lot of, features are continuing till modern times, and one of the features that continues is the shape of the pot. Even today, people are making exactly the replicas or the identical pots of, like the Harappan. Now, this particular pot looks exactly like, the replica of the Harappan. If you keep the Harappan pot and modern pot side by side, you will not be able to identify, which one is modern and which one is ancient. So there is that much similarity. Also, we have found this portable ovens, in fact, at number of Harappan sites. Probably the Harappans were the ones, who are responsible for, introduction of, this oven system. We always say that in the Harappans were one of the important contribution of the Harappan is the chicken tandoor. We have found, the tandoor, in fact, at number of Harappan sites. And sites like Kalibanga has produced the evidence of the actual physical remains of the chicken bones, which are charred. And that is the reason, the chicken tandoor is so popular, in fact, in Punjab and that part. So this is the contribution, in fact, of the Harappans. And what is also important that, there is a continuity in the shape of the pots. You can see, in fact, these are some of the ancient pots, and see the modern pot. Exactly, there is a lot of similarity in the shape of the pot. So that indicates that, that the food habit of the people also has not changed for last 5,000 years. We are continuing the same kind of food habit for last 5,000 years. And then, of course, this is the technology which was again perfected, introduced or originated long back around 7,000 BC. But during the Harappan times, it was perfected. And even today, in fact, we are carrying out this particular, technology or tradition in some parts of, South Asia. There are some craftsmen in the Khambat region who are still making, the type, exactly similar, Harappan type beads. So there is, the technology that these people are using is exactly like the Harappan technology. And they're also making, a lot of, this trade in the, the semi-precious stones or the articles made in semi-precious stone. And these are some of the, finished goods of the modern, craftsmen. Bronze technology is one of the important technology which was introduced by the Harappans in South Asia. And also, in this case, you can see the tradition that was introduced again by the Harappans continues even today, in fact. These are again some of the important contributions. Now, the earliest evidence of cotton anywhere in the world comes from the Indian subcontinent. At the site of Mehergarh, in the earliest level at Mehergarh, we have the evidence of cotton dated back to 7,000 or 7,500 BC. And again, we at number of, early maybe farming settlements, We have the evidence of maybe spindle wheels and evidence of maybe spinning cotton. So that type of evidence comes from the Indian subcontinent. So again, this is the contribution that of the Harappans to the world. The printing technology was developed by the Harappans. We have, I have handled this particular, this so-called priest king, which is kept in a safe at the National Museum in Karachi. So when I visited, they took out that original, specimen, and I could handle that, and I could see the traces of color on his so-called shawl. And probably, the Harappans, that, the block, printing technology was developed by the Harappans, and they were using that. So this is again a very important contribution of the Harappans. We also have, there are the, small bait, the charpai. So this charpai, concept again was introduced by the Harappans. These are the replicas of that. And we do have the impression of cotton, in fact, on this, charpai or the, bait produced by the Harappans. Similarly, we also have the earliest evidence of, wool fabric anywhere in the world from the Harappan sites, and also the evidence of the jute fabric, from the Harappan sites. So this is this again, the traditions, the technologies that were introduced by the Harappans, and they continue. What is important, what is interesting, that we always thought that the silk was introduced in China and then it traveled to Indian subcontinent. Now we have, of course, the earliest evidence of silk from the mainland China, but the evidence of the domesticated silk comes from the Indian subcontinent. This is the evidence of the domesticated silk found in the Harappan levels, and again, we feel that that Harappans were responsible for the introduction of the domestic silk for the first time, in fact, in this part, and gradually, perhaps, this particular tradition must have spread to different parts. Some of the continuity in the tradition, we always believe that the yoga practice or the yoga tradition is the main contribution of the Harappans. These are some of the terracotta figurines shown in different postures, and exactly same postures we practice even when it is a part of the yogic posture. So this is again an important tradition of the Harappans. The games, these are some of the gamesmen that we have from the Harappan sites. Again, earliest evidence of its kind anywhere in fact in the world. This typical, this Namaste tradition again probably was introduced by the Harappans and continues till modern times. So this is one of the terracotta figurines shown in fact in the Namaste position. This is the female figurine. Two female figurines were found at the site of Nausharo, which is close to the site of Mehergarh in Pakistan. And perhaps this, the use of vermilion in fact in the, in the head, of course, was introduced again by the Harappans. So this is again the earliest evidence of its kind. So most of the traditions, we talk about today, they are, they were introduced by the Harappans long back, and there is a continuity in that. Even the earliest evidence of slate comes from the Harappan site. We do not have this type of evidence anywhere in the world. So perhaps the Harappans, they also developed maybe some kind of education system, and they must have continued that in fact in different parts. We always thought that the Harappan traditions have died around 1500 BC. But what happens in fact after 1500 BC, after the decline of the Harappan culture, the Harappans started moving in fact away from their core area. They started moving towards the periphery part, and they got mixed up with the local population there because the periphery part was already occupied by the contemporary society. And they got mixed up with the contemporary society, and there in fact they kept alive the Harappan tradition. And in India, of course, we have very strong oral tradition. Manisha or somebody was mentioning that, that somebody is working on the oral tradition in different parts of the country. But I have a good experience, in fact, at a place called Balathal in Mewar region of Rajasthan. I was excavating at the site, and one day one Bhat came there, and he started narrating the history for last 800 years. And we just inquired, how he can, whether there is any, writing system available with him. is that no writing system. This is all because of the oral tradition. So he could remember the tradition for last 800 years. So that is a Indian tradition, and probably this particular tradition continued in India, and then when this the earliest universities were introduced in the in this part, like the Takshila or Nalanda universities, they started imparting because the knowledge was continuing from the Harappan times to the to the establishment of Nalanda and Takshila universities, and there they started teaching the Indian tradition Indian traditional knowledge system, and it was so popular in fact. These Nalanda particularly, they had 10,000 students and flourished from mostly from 7th century to 11th century. The Nalanda University really had peak period. So that time number of students came from different parts of the world to learn about the Indian knowledge system. And today in fact the government of India has established a new Nalanda International University, and it will be great if you can continue teaching these subjects in which the Indians have excelled. For example, philosophy, for example, or the astronomy. So these are the subjects, or mathematics, which are very important. And even Chinese traveler, in fact, Huyen Sang mentions about the importance of this traditional knowledge system. So this knowledge has remained in fact somewhere, and it was taught in fact till the decline of this particular university. This university was destroyed maybe around 12th century AD, and after that the University of Oxford was established after the decline of this particular university. And finally, I will discuss about what we are proposing at the site of Rakhigarhi. You don't see much, of course. The remains that we excavated, they have covered back now. But we have two important projects at this particular site. One is the research project, in which of course we want to understand the history of the site. What is the beginning of the Harappan culture of the site, and how the Harappan culture has evolved. We always say that the early Harappan phase is transformed into the mature Harappan or the Harappan civilization, but we do not have sufficient evidence to indicate what are the transformations have taken place in their material culture. So that part is is being done at the site. The other part of our research that we are doing is, of course, we want to understand the composition of the Harappan population. Who are the Harappan people, and their their relationship with the maybe contemporary population, and whether the modern people are the descendants of the Harappans. So these are some of the questions that we are asking, and the only way by which we can answer the question, of course, is the extracting DNA from the Harappan skeletal remains. We tried that at the site of Harmana, the other site, which is roughly 40 kilometers from the site of Rakhigarhi, but we failed there because probably our excavation method was wrong there. We excavated those burials and kept open for almost 1 month for the people to come and see the evidence. But maybe because we kept it open, but perhaps the DNA had already gone from the skeletal remains. And then of course we started working with the Koreans, and the Koreans suggested that that you excavate, open the burials, document them immediately, and then pack them and transport to the laboratory. So this is what we did, and I'm happy to announce that 6 skeletal remains from Rakhigarhi have produced the DNA results, and by September we will be able to publish the DNA results. So for the first time, we will shed some light on the composition of the Harappan people and their relation with the contemporary or the modern population. So this is one part of the research that we are doing at the site of Rakhigarhi. And the second part, in fact, which we are doing in fact in collaboration with other agencies like INTAC and the state government, is that we want to develop the site from tourism point of view. And for that, of course, there are two proposals. One is that the remains that we will excavate, that will be preserved and conserved the site so that people can go there anytime and they can walk through the Harappan street, or they can get the feel of the Harappan structures. So that is one part of the research we are doing. And second, as a part of this, we also want to develop a site museum. And in the site museum, we are not only going to display the Harappan material, in fact, that is of course known, but there, we can, showcase the contributions of the Harappans to the history of the region, to the history of the, nation, and to the history of the, world. So then only, people will, understand, the importance of this culture and why we should really study the ancient cultures. I am extremely happy that, in India, at least, the, institute like INTAC is, doing, excellent work, in fact, in the preservation and conservation of our ancient heritage. And for this reason, in fact, we need to preserve our heritage for this reason. In fact, this is something, from this ancient heritage we will learn a lot. And we are also doing a lot of what we call as the outreach archaeology or community archaeology. So, when we excavate at the site, we always, discuss with the villagers. We always tell them, educate them about the importance of the cultural heritage. And we have realized that unless there is a participation of the local people for the preservation, conservation of the heritage, it is not going to happen, in fact. Because no government agency, Archaeological Survey of India has a lot of limitations, the state government has a lot of limitations, and we have the vast wealth, in fact, spread spread almost all over the country. So if there is a participation of the local people, then perhaps it is possible to preserve and conserve our cultural heritage. And from that point of view, we are educating the people about the importance, why we should study the ancient cultures, ancient heritage. We invite a lot of schools also, because we want to target the young generation, and we again give them a lot of lecture series. We tell them about the importance of this. So these are some of the efforts that needs to be done. We are doing, of course, but everybody in fact working on ancient culture or heritage, they need to make sure that there is enough participation from the local people, and the people are properly educated. See, one example I'll give you. When I went to the site of Farmana, the site is located in the in the private land, and the owner said that we are not going to allow you to excavate here, because once you start excavation, the government will take over the land and we will not get any compensation. But then we started pursuing. In fact, we started telling him the importance. We said that we have come here from Pune to dig out the history of your village, and this village has played very important role in the region and also in nation history. And slowly he was convinced. And then as we started excavating, he developed a lot of interest. He used to come every day on the site. He used to sit there. And then he started inviting people from other villages, and proudly, in fact, he used to tell them what is the significance of this. So if you make efforts, I'm sure that people will come forward, and the dream of preserving, conserving the archaeological heritage or the cultural heritage of the country can be realized. And now, of course, government has big plans for the development of tourism. So all of us have to play a very important role in the development of tourism, because tourism can be a very important revenue generating means of the country. And there are some countries like Greece or Egypt, in fact, which are run on tourism. So something like that needs to be done. So I thank you all for your attention and patience. And again, I thank the INTAC for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. Thank you very much.
If you have any questions, he can answer.
I have a question, please.
Physician.
Is there any evidence? Is there any evidence that people of Harappa knew about the astronomical, knowledge that we have in some other parts of the country? Evidence of astronomical knowledge in Harappan people. That is my question.
We don't know exactly, because as I said, that the written records are not really deciphered yet. But there is one professor from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai, and he's working at the site of Dholavira. There are some, structures on top of the mound at Dholavira. There are some circular structures, and according to him, in fact, he hypothesizes that perhaps these are the structures which were made for the astronomical observations. But there is no clear-cut evidence about the presence of that. But considering the fact that the Harappans had excelled in fact in many fields, they also must have done excellent work in fact in the astronomy also.
Has any research been done in terms of the correlation of what you found from the archaeological evidence at Harappan sites versus what has been done at Dwarka, under the sea, where they have done some carbon dating and they found a lot of remnants of the civilization which go beyond 10,000 years?
At Dwarka, in fact, part of the city, there is a late Harappan phase at Dwarka. And maybe we have the evidence that maybe around 1800 BC, the sea level has gone down. So when during the earlier as during the mature Harappan phase, the sea level was quite high, and part of the fortification wall in fact was built in the sea, and when the sea level went down, that got exposed. But otherwise, Dwarka is was properly developed in fact in the early strike phase, not in the Harappan times.
Hello.
So what is your comment on late Harappan is early Aryan? The Aryans did not come from outside, it is only late Harappan which continued, posited itself into the Aryan civilization. And I fail to understand if cuneiform could be deciphered, why not hieroglyphics, why not the,
Harappan.
yes, this is very strange. Very, very strange.
See, one thing is clear that so far we are not getting any clue in fact, how to,
The tablets, of course, are there, and the animals.
No, we have some, maybe few letters. We do not have inscription like, it was there in fact in West. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, in fact, they have found some inscriptions. We do not have like, like that. We have maybe 4 or 5 letters in fact on the Harappan seals. And we are not really at this stage, we are not getting any clue in fact how to start, with the deciphering of the Harappan script. And, we are not making a collaborative efforts. It is not only archaeologists, but there are experts from different fields. In fact, they need to come together. Like the linguist people should come there, Sanskrit scholars should come there, anthropologists, and then they start working on this. Unfortunately, we Indians are not good in fact in working in a team. We are individually very good. So that is the problem in fact. And about the alien, we do not have in fact. Some scholars, they hypothesize that maybe the late Harappans were the Vedic people or the Aryans, but we do not have any evidence. In fact, that does not really reflect in the archaeological data that large-scale migration took place. In fact, in last 10,000 years. So for 10,000 years, there is no evidence of any large-scale migration either from outside to India or from India to outside. So the Aryan theory, in fact, is a myth. In fact, it is not the reality. And even some of the geneticists have also done work on this, and they say that there is no change in the population pattern for last 10,000 years.
Yes, I have a question to ask. Is it a fact that this Harappan culture perished at one point of time, and the successive cultures were developed after some gap, or it was a seamless transition to successive cultures?
See, as I said that when the Harappans flourished, in fact, in the northwest part of the country, the other regions were also occupied. There were a number of cultures which were contributed to the Harappans, what we call as the Chalcolithic people. So the entire the Deccan region, the Ganga plain, the northwest part, in fact, beyond western part of northwest, all was occupied. So they were contemporary people, and maybe probably due to the decline in the climatic condition, the people had to desert the core area. So people started moving in fact from the core area, and they went to the periphery and got mixed up with the local population. That is how they lost their identity. But they also kept the Harappan traditions alive in fact in those areas. So we never say that the Harappans have died. they have continued somewhere, but they deserted the core part. And then they have, the Harappan legacy, as I say that, it is there in fact till modern times. Even in the villages, we can see the Harappan legacy.
She wants to ask.
Yeah, please.
This is with regard to textiles. The man with a shawl, that has been given many different explanations, and we do not really know the history of block printing in India. Block printing existed about 11th century in Gujarat.
Right.
So I think that identification needs more authentication.
No, there is, what I said that there is a hypothesis, because we see the color on this, on the that flower pattern on the shawl, and we thought that perhaps archaeologists, most of the archaeologists believe that perhaps these type of the printing or the the tradition must have been introduced by the Harappans sometimes, and then maybe it may have continued in other parts. But again this is a hypothesis. We do not have solid evidence to prove this particular hypothesis.
That's the last question.
Or any correlation with the Sangam literature, the period of writing and notations versus the seals of the Harappan culture?
No.
Not yet.
No, because the date of Sangam literature is later, in fact, much later than the Harappans.
The second question is, did you find any radioactive substances, which has been shared all over the YouTube, at some of the sites?
No, that is all fantasy, in fact. There is no evidence for that. Yes.
Last question.
Last question.
Well, maybe a generic question. Thank you for the presentation, but I also noticed the lack of connection with the Saraswati thing. In fact, in your map also you mentioned this as Ghaggar and not Saraswati. And this is basically the controversy in which you are saying it continued, but perhaps you sort of fell short of calling it the mature as the Vedic period. So what is your take on that?
No, because I did not intentionally mention Ghaggar as Saraswati because of the controversy about the identification. But I strongly, personally, I believe that the Harappans and the Rigvedic people were one and the same. There are various reasons for that. One of the, in Vedic texts, there is mention about this river Saraswati, and also mentioned that there were number of settlements along the bank of river Saraswati. And when you see the distribution of the Harappan sites, nearly 2/3 of the Harappan sites are located in the Ghaggar Hakra basin. So that means located in the Saraswati basin. Secondly, there is a mention about the flourishing cities and towns on the bank of river Saraswati. So we have only Harappan cities on the bank of river Saraswati, like this Rakhigarh is one of them. We do not have historical or even medieval cities, in fact, that flourishing in fact in that part. Thirdly, there is mention about the fire worship in the text, and the sites like Kalibanga, Rakhigarh, these are the only sites which are producing evidence in this respect. So there is some clue, but then we do not have the Vedic gods represented in the Harappan levels. We do not have horse in fact in the Harappan levels. So unless we have maybe this positive evidence in this respect, it is always believed that it is not resolved yet.
Your final question.
Yeah.
Can we safely say that we are the modern day Harappans and the descendants of the Harappans, and current day Indian civilization that you see is the modern day remnants of that, product of that?
Yes, I will say that, but you have to wait till September end, because in September most probably we are publishing the DNA data. That will make it clear. But when you see the archaeological data, in fact, of the heritage data, there is a continuity from the Harappan times to the modern times. As I showed you, there is a continuity in the house, housing pattern. The modern house looks exactly like the plan of the Harappans. Then this food pattern, the pots, various traditions, the yoga tradition, the Vermilion tradition, everything continues from the Harappan times to the modern times. So I feel strongly that, there is a continuity.
So we are the modern day Harappans.
Let's hope.
Yes. Ask that person to come.
I would just want to add one thing. This fox and crow story is 5,000-year-old. We have evidence in Mohenjo-daro and Lothal pottery. That is another continuity of the cultural tradition in India.
Right. So also, I would like to, narrate my experience at the site of Mohenjo-daro. So what they did, at the site of Mohenjo-daro, they, the initial conservation method that adopted was very much Western method. They covered all the structures, walls and structures with the concrete initially, and then later they realized that that the bricks are decaying from inside, and they started removing that, and then there was more damage. Because of that, the site is really in very bad shape. Now what they neglected, which I suggested to them, that in that region even today the local people are carrying out the traditional conservation method. So if they adopt that method, I'm sure that sites like Harappa, Mohenjo, or even Rakhigarhi can be properly preserved. So we have learned in fact from this particular lesson, when we want to preserve the site of Rakhigarhi, then we know in fact what methods has to be adopted there. So thank you very much.